I think it's incredible that in the video game medium, where we ascribe our enjoyment of something primarily to the gameplay experience or maybe a narrative experience, the one area that can actually often have the most impact on whether or not we are interested in a game is how much we enjoy the aesthetics. This is true for all entertainment mediums, but I feel like it's most interesting to discuss with video games. And it's even more interesting due to how little I feel it's acknowledged. Like, I know a ton of people who will tell me what aesthetics they like in video games. It appears that photorealism is the most popular art style a game can have, at least when looking at sales, and I assume a lot of people with more core gaming taste like me are partial to an anime aesthetic. Most people I know can identify what visual styles or settings or general genres they like, but I'm not sure I know as many people who would be comfortable admitting just how much those preferences impact what their favorite media is, or how good they think a piece of media is, how much it would alter the order of a list like this. So, I'm gonna stop talking about it and instead walk the walk by admitting to you that Triangle Strategy is genuinely one of the greatest RPGs ever made, and it is only held back for me by adopting one of my least favorite aesthetics. Fantasy, whether it be high or dark or gothic or whatever, is never my jam to begin with. I was a sci-fi kid growing up. But of all the fantasies out there, this kind of fantasy, where they're like vaguely medieval-ish, and the characters are saying thine and your and hitherto and pray untold and whom, is just so unappealing to me. And it's a credit to the game that, weird tangent aside, Triangle Strategy is so good it's almost frustrating. Frustrating how effortlessly it seemed to pull off its own quality. I tend to prefer really complicated gameplay systems that are often off-putting to general gamers. But I feel like tactical RPGs are maybe the one genre where we all kind of unanimously want as many mechanics to mess with as possible. Like, it only goes to add to the tactics and the tactical experience you're supposed to be having. And not to suggest that Triangle Strategy is the most mechanically rich RPG ever, but the specific choices it makes to add depth are so well chosen. Such as assigning the direction your unit faces after movement, the positional circumstances that allow for team-up attacks, the more nuanced roles each individual unit gets to play in combat, letting everyone feel like a true, irreplaceable individual. It all feels so perfectly chosen to add natural depth, without overcomplicating genre norms. As a whole, Triangle Strategy shows a great deal of respect for the intelligence of the player. Overt hand-holding and tutorialization is largely not present, yet there are still enough helpful tools in place that I feel like anyone who genuinely wants to have this experience will be able to succeed. However, perhaps my favorite thing Triangle Strategy does in comparison to similar games is the scales of conviction. Like many games, Triangle Strategy lets you make choices to determine the outcome of the story. However, brilliantly, you actually don't make any choices at all. Your team, your crew, your friends, your allies all get to cast a vote on major decisions while you are simply at the mercy of what they vote for. This means that not only do you have to decide what choice you as the player want to make, but then you also have to figure out how to convince each of your allies to agree with you so that they'll vote your way. Actually, scratch that. I want to broaden this a little bit. My favorite thing about Triangle Strategy is that it is potentially the best leadership simulator I've ever seen in a game. Which is huge, because think of how many games put you in a position of leadership. But most of the time, you are given more or less absolute control as the leader. What you say goes, everything is a system at your whim to be manipulated. Triangle Strategy more directly addresses the reality of a leader. In that, it ends up being way more about the people you are leading than you yourself. The scales of conviction force you to interface with your friends directly, and you will only be successful with them if you know them as people and what they value. Your ability to sway people's hearts and minds is directly impacted by the toolkit you build yourself by interacting with the ordinary people you lead. The interactions you have with them, the questions you ask them, and the information you learn from them. The focus on three separate convictions, liberty, utility, and morality, demonstrate that choices in leadership are never black and white. There usually aren't good or bad choices in this game. Unlike most games like this, it doesn't really encourage you to pursue a good ending or avoid a bad ending. You and your team just do the best with what you have, and you see where it goes together. Despite being true to genre norms, Triangle Strategy feels wholly unique. I can't think of anything to compare it to directly. It and your actions within it feel grand and epic, which this genre is particularly well equipped to do, while still encouraging you to pay attention to the smaller character moments that allow the game to feel more intimate, even if they're talking like a music major who gets a little bit too into the Ren Fair. I know it's a silly name for a video game to have, but if you are a fan of tactical RPGs, there is no way you are allowed to skip Triangle Strategy. If you think it sounds silly letting a game's aesthetics change how you perceive its quality, it is way sillier to let a title do that.